He said she was his sister. That's the first lie I swallowed whole, unchewed, unexamined like a shard of glass wrapped in sugar. I smiled at her at dinner, poured her wine, let her sit on my couch, touch my things, and laugh at jokes that were never hers to understand. I told myself, family comes in all shapes, that maybe I was lucky to love a man so full of heart, so capable of loyalty. But now looking back, I realize she never once looked me in the eyes when she hugged me. And he always flinched just slightly when I called her your sister. It's strange how hindsight doesn't arrive like a flood. It comes in slivers, quiet, deadly, like the way I started noticing the long glances, the shared silences, the way he would laugh a little too hard when she teased him like a schoolboy being noticed for the first time. But I ignored it. Of course I did. Because when you love someone, you don't just give them your trust, you hand them your reality. You let them shape it. And he carved mine into a prison I couldn't even see. I used to think love was supposed to be hard. That real intimacy meant bending until your spine ached, until your voice got quiet enough to make space for theirs. I thought sacrifice was sacred. That pain was just the tax you paid to keep someone beside you. So I let her stay, weekends, then weeks, then months. She's going through a lot, he said. She has no one else. I'm all she has. But I was his home, wasn't I? I was the one who made coffee every morning just the way he liked it. Half and half, 2 sugars, always stirred with a spoon that never touched anyone else's cup. I was the one who kissed him after he came back from work, even when he forgot to ask about my day. I was the one who remembered his mother's birthday, who held him through that loss he couldn't speak of, who never once used his silence against him. But she was the one he smiled for. I first caught them with silence. You know, the kind when 2 people are in the same room and their quiet says more than their words ever could. It hums, it pulses, it wraps itself around the air like a secret too heavy to be spoken. I stood in the hallway that night just outside the living room. He didn't know I was there. She didn't know either. I heard her laugh, low, intimate, not quite innocent, and then his voice, softer than I'd heard in months, like he was offering a version of himself I hadn't earned anymore. Something in me splintered, but I didn't confront them. Not yet. Pain has a way of softening into strategy when you've been burned too many times. I went back to the bedroom, folded my fury into a drawer, and told myself I would wait. Watch. Let the lie reveal itself without my help. Because the moment a man like him thinks you're suspicious, he hides better. And I wanted to see it all. They didn't kiss in front of me, not even once. That was their brilliance. They respected the boundaries of their betrayal, polished it, decorated it in decency, wrapped it in that poisonous word family. But the intimacy grew louder, the shared music, the inside jokes, the way her shampoo started showing up in the bathroom, the scent of almond and amber that never belonged to me. He started locking his phone. She started borrowing his hoodie. And God help me, I started sleeping in the guest room on nights when they watched movies too late on the couch. Just one more episode, she'd say. And he'd say, you go on to bed, babe. Like I was the one intruding. I found the messages 4 weeks later. I didn't go looking for them. I wasn't that woman. Not yet. But his phone lit up when he was in the shower, and her name glowed like a bullet on the screen I missed last night already. I opened it. I had to. And there it was. The second lie. Not just betrayal, but intimacy. Deep, intentional, chosen closeness. The way he used to write to me when we were still new. Before comfort became control, before devotion became manipulation, before I forgot how to ask for more. I dreamt of you again, he wrote. She doesn't understand me like you do. You're the only one who really sees me. Funny. That's exactly what he once said to me on the night I let him into my body for the first time, when I cried afterwards because I thought I had finally found my forever. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I watched him that morning, watched the way he sipped his coffee, humming to himself, kissing me on the forehead like he hadn't shattered the world I built around him. And that's when I knew. This wasn't just betrayal. It was performance, a theater of deception so practiced, so polished, it could win awards. But I would not be the audience anymore. If he wanted a stage, I would give him one. And when the curtains fell, it would be me holding the final line. So I stayed. That was the hardest part. Not leaving, not confronting, not collapsing in on myself like a woman undone. No, the hardest part was staying. Smiling when I felt hollow, laughing when I wanted to scream, letting them believe they were clever, invincible, hidden, that their little secret dressed in sibling loyalty and borrowed trust would never see the light. But I was wide awake. Every second with them became a rehearsal. Every moment was evidence. I was the quiet storm gathering just beyond their window. And they were too drunk on each other to notice the sky turning black. He started to forget the details of his own lies. That's the thing about betrayal, it makes you bold, careless. He left receipts in the car, forgot to delete messages, began carrying cologne I never bought him. Almond and amber, her scent rubbing off on him like a stain he thought I couldn't see. She started dressing differently around the house. Lingerie under robes, slipping into the kitchen late at night in lace and silk like she owned the walls I painted. Sorry, she'd whisper, smirking as she passed me. Didn't mean to wake you. But she did. They both did. And soon, I wasn't just awake, I was alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. The numbness burned off like fog at sunrise. Clarity stepped in like a scream I had swallowed too long. And I began to build. The first thing I did was buy a new journal. Blood red, leather-bound, no lines. A space to spill, not organize. I wrote everything down. The dates, the glances, the slips. The long nights when he came home late and smelled of betrayal. The way her earrings sometimes sparkled on my nightstand. The subtle shift in his voice when he said my name like it was an obligation, not a desire. I documented the death of our love in ink. Not for proof, not for revenge. For me. Because when a woman starts writing, she stops erasing herself. Then I called a lawyer. Not a friend, not a therapist, not a sister. A lawyer. Because when you've been broken enough times, you stop looking for someone to listen and start looking for someone to win. We weren't married yet, thank God. But everything we had was entangled leases, joint accounts, that damn vacation home I never wanted in the first place. And I wanted out with precision. Quietly, I said to her, I don't want a storm. I want a clean sever. And she nodded like she'd seen this before. Women who came in with fire in their eyes and ashes on their tongue. You're not the first, she said, but you look like you'll be the last. And somehow, that gave me comfort. In the meantime, I cooked him breakfast. I let her borrow my dresses. I took photos of us all together, smiling like a good little doll, and posted them with captions like family first and home is who you love. Because when people betray you, they forget you still hold the pen. And I had every intention of writing the final chapter. He proposed a month later, on the deck of the lake house, just as the sun began to fall like a curtain behind us. I almost laughed. Not because it was romantic, not because I was surprised, but because she was watching just barely hidden behind the window. Her lips parted, her eyes full of a hunger she thought she had hidden. He knelt, with a ring I chose, a moment rehearsed 1,000 times in my head when I still believed he was mine. And I said yes, of course I did, because nothing tastes sweeter than the illusion of victory fed to the wrong man. The engagement was the spark. Suddenly she grew colder, sharper. Her sisterly affection dissolved into subtle attacks. She called me lazy when I didn't cook. She said I was gaining weight. She mocked the way I decorated our bedroom. He laughed it off, of course. She's just teasing, he'd say. Don't be so sensitive. But I wasn't sensitive. I was watching. Every insult was a confession. Every little jab a jealous wound cracking open. She wanted him. And he wanted to have us both. And God forgive me, I wanted them to keep playing their roles just long enough for the curtain to fall. Because the night of the wedding rehearsal, that was when I burned it all to the ground. The night before our rehearsal dinner, I set the stage. Candles, wine, a long white dress that brushed the floor like a whisper. I looked like the bride he thought I still wanted to be. He came home late, of course, claimed work, claimed traffic, smelled like her. She wasn't home, not yet. Let's celebrate, I said softly, handing him a glass. He smiled, kissed my cheek like a man who believed his sins would never surface. And for a second, I saw it, the boy in him, the liar, the coward, the charmer, all tangled in one glance. I didn't say a word, not then. I just made sure his phone was unlocked. Just made sure the audio recorder I'd planted beneath the living room table was blinking. Because she'd be home soon. And they always whispered louder after wine. I listened to it all that night. In the bathroom, door locked, earbuds in, I sat on the cold floor and heard them laugh about me. Mock my voice, my cooking, my dress. Heard her ask, "How much longer do you think she'll believe this?" He chuckled, long enough to sign the house over. And just like that, I stopped crying. Because there's a silence that follows the last tear, a silence that doesn't break, a silence that turns a woman into a weapon. And that was the night I became dangerous. I didn't cancel the rehearsal dinner. I invited everyone. His parents, mine, her coworkers, our mutual friends. I wore white again, but not bridal white, funeral white, and they didn't notice. No one ever does, because no one really sees a woman when she's made invisible long enough. They thought I'd give a sweet speech, that I'd thank everyone for coming, toast to love. But I raised my glass and gave them truth. Thank you all for being here, I began, voice steady as glass. It means the world to us that you could witness this chapter. He smiled, she raised her wine. And then I continued. But before we walk into forever, there's something I need to share, something about honesty and betrayal, and what it means when someone brings poison into your home and calls it love. The room fell silent. He shifted in his seat. She looked like a deer mid-bullet. And I pressed play. I had transferred the audio to my phone, synced it to the speaker. Their voices filled the room, laughing, scheming, kissing. Her calling me pathetic, him calling me temporary. It played for 3 minutes, no interruptions, no mercy. And when it ended, I turned to face them, both of them. She was pale, he was furious. And I was free. I won't marry you, I said. I won't burn for your cowardice. Then I pulled the ring from my finger, dropped it into his untouched champagne, and walked out. Just like that. Not a scream, not a sob. Just the sound of heels on hardwood and a door that would never open for them again. You'd think that would be the end. But women like me, we don't just walk, we reclaim. Over the next weeks, I closed accounts, transferred titles, moved every dollar he didn't think I could touch. He thought he was the smart one, the planner, the puppet master. But he forgot I was watching the whole time, and women who endure betrayal don't just survive. We strategize. The vacation house sold. The joint savings drained legally. The condo he hid her in leased in my name, eviction filed. She tried to call me once, left a voicemail sobbing saying she never meant to fall in love. I played it twice, not to pity her, not to hurt, but to remember, because forgiveness isn't always forgetting. Sometimes it's simply choosing not to let someone's name taste like bitterness in your mouth anymore. He called a dozen times, switched to emails, then handwritten letters. Please, just talk to me. It wasn't real, it was confusion. But I didn't respond, because silence when chosen is a form of power. It says everything louder than words ever could. And he doesn't get access to my pain anymore. That's mine now. All of it. I earned it. I survived it. I built something from it. And in the months that followed, I began to breathe again. Not all at once, but slowly, like thawing after frostbite. I redecorated, bought new sheets, painted the walls warm gold, started sleeping on the side of the bed I once avoided, smiled at strangers, danced barefoot in my kitchen to sad music that didn't make me sad anymore. I even adopted a dog named her Clementine, because soft things deserve homes too. And for once, I was no longer waiting for someone to make me feel chosen. I had already chosen myself. Grief doesn't always look like tears. Sometimes it looks like a woman sitting alone in a cafe with no makeup on, finally eating something she didn't cook for someone else. Sometimes it's throwing out every candle that ever held his scent. Sometimes it's walking into a room and not shrinking. I grieved in silence, not for him, not even for her. I grieved for the version of me that loved him honestly, the girl who trusted too fully, the woman who mistook manipulation for mystery, withdrawal for depth, and neglect for emotional complexity. That girl was gone, but I still visit her. In the quiet moments, when I catch my reflection brushing her hair, when I tuck her into bed at night and tell her he never deserved you, he never even saw you. People started asking questions. What happened? Where is he? Is the wedding still on? I answered with a smile, the kind that makes people uncomfortable but too afraid to pry. Oh, we chose different futures, I'd say. And it was true. He chose betrayal, and I chose to live. Her social media went quiet for a while. Then slowly she reappeared posting cryptic quotes about heartbreak healing new beginnings. Sometimes the love of your life comes after the mistake of your life. God removes people for a reason. She was never your friend if she wanted your man. Cute, really. She wanted pity. She wanted to rebrand herself as the woman scorned. But you can't wear victimhood like a costume if you wrote the script for your own cruelty. And deep down, she knew that no matter how many stories she told, no matter how many filters or followers or rehearsed apologies she gathered, she would always be the woman who stood beside a man already loved and decided to compete instead of leave. He reached out again, months later, sent flowers to my new place. No card, just a bouquet of lilies, my least favorite, which made sense. He never listened, only watched, only used. Then came the final email. Subject line, I finally understand. Inside, he wrote 5 paragraphs, apologies, confessions, nostalgia soaked in regret. He said he missed my steadiness, my loyalty, the way I never gave up on him, the way I made him feel like a man without demanding anything in return. And that last part, that was the truth, the deepest cut. Because that's what I was to him, a mirror, not a partner, not a witness, just a surface to reflect whatever he needed to believe about himself. Until I shattered, until I stopped bending to fit into the story he wrote without asking if I wanted to be in it. I didn't reply. I didn't rage. I didn't forgive. I just lived. There is a life that waits for women on the other side of betrayal. It's quiet at first, a little strange, like wearing someone else's coat. But then it begins to warm, and it starts with the little things. Buying groceries without thinking of his favorite snacks, sleeping in the middle of the bed, ordering pasta and not thinking about the calories because he once said he liked women disciplined, dancing to songs I used to skip because they reminded me of him, wearing red lipstick again, his sister's favorite color. God, how many things had I given up trying not to provoke the insecurities of the people who called it love? Too many, but not anymore. I rebuilt in silence, but my silence wasn't passive. It was powerful. I started a business, small at first, freelance design, projects I'd put off because I was too busy supporting his dreams. Then it grew, clients, contracts, recognition. Turns out when you stop pouring into broken cups, you finally have something to give yourself. I met women through that work. Women like me, not broken, not bitter, just awake. Women who stopped waiting to be chosen, who started building lives so full, so rich, that no man could ever be the center of them again. And together we rose, one design, one dinner, one deep breath at a time. There's a peace that comes when you no longer need closure from the people who broke you. I used to lie awake wondering why. Why wasn't I enough? Why didn't he love me the way I loved him? Why did she do it? Why didn't they stop? But now I don't need the answers. Because I know the truth. Betrayal is never about your worth. It's about their lack, their hunger, their emptiness disguised as desire. He didn't betray me because I wasn't good enough. He betrayed me because he wasn't whole enough to recognize good when it held him gently. So no, this is not a love story. And it's not a tragedy either. It's a resurrection. It's a woman who buried the old version of herself with her own hands, said goodbye to the ghosts, and walked into the fire barefoot only to find out she was the flame all along. People think revenge is loud, that it comes with screams and slashed tires with confrontations and claws bared, that it's dramatic and cinematic and burns everything in sight. But the most devastating revenge I ever served was silence, success, and a life so soft and self-owned that neither of them could recognize the girl they once thought they had broken. I didn't call her out publicly. I didn't post screenshots or expose them in group chats. No, I let her live in the mirror of her own decisions. And I let him sit in the ruins of what he destroyed, thinking it was a game, a thrill, a temporary indulgence. What they forgot was this. I was the story. I was the narrator, the author, the blood ink on every page. And when I closed the book on them, I didn't just end a chapter. I rewrote the ending. It's strange how peace doesn't arrive with fireworks. It arrives slowly, like the sound of your own laugh returning to your body, like catching yourself humming again, like looking in the mirror and realizing you've stopped searching for signs of being good enough. I moved apartments, a place with light, real light, big windows, high ceilings, quiet mornings where I sip my coffee without anyone watching, judging, diminishing. There are plants here now, and they're still alive. Turns out all I needed to bloom was no one stepping on my roots. I started journaling again, not out of pain, but out of presence. I write about sunrises, about running into an old friend and laughing too loud in a bookstore, about the way my dog snuggles into me like I'm the safest place she knows. I even started dating again, slowly, cautiously, not looking for someone to rescue me, not even looking for forever. Just companionship, curiosity, a hand to hold that doesn't feel like a leash. And sometimes I sit across from someone and think, this is what it should have felt like all along. Easy, safe, free of performance. Not perfect, but honest. He saw me once, at a gallery opening downtown. I was standing with friends, glass of wine in hand, laughing, really laughing, the kind that lifts your chin and softens your shoulders. I saw him before he saw me. He looked older, smaller, like regret had settled into the bones of his face. And when our eyes met, he smiled, just a little. The kind of smile that asks for something, acknowledgement, forgiveness, a sign that you still remember the sweetness before the rot. But I didn't smile back, not out of hate. Out of peace, because I didn't need to return anything, not even a glance. He had already taken enough. I sometimes wonder if she stayed. If they lasted. If she still curls into his side pretending she doesn't wonder when he'll betray her too. That's the thing about taking someone through deception, you never really trust the loyalty you stole. You wear it like a crown made of thorns bleeding every time you try to convince yourself it was love. Maybe they lasted, maybe they didn't. But I promise you this, I never looked back. Closure didn't come the way I expected. It didn't arrive in some big cinematic showdown or tearful apology. It came the night I made dinner for myself, just me, and lit candles anyway. It came when I laughed at a movie alone and realized I wasn't lonely. It came when I wore the red dress she once said made me look desperate and felt like a goddess in it. Closure came when I stopped needing anyone to admit they were wrong, because I knew I was right to leave, right to rise, right to end the story before it ended me. And if you're listening to this, still wondering if you should stay, still twisting yourself into softness for someone who doesn't know how to hold you without breaking your spine, still convincing yourself that maybe next week, next month, next time, they'll finally see you, let me be the voice you needed when you were silent. Leave, not because you're weak, but because you've been too strong for far too long. And your softness, your wildness, your knowing, it deserves a life where it's not questioned, where it doesn't have to defend itself, where you are loved in return not despite your depth, but because of it. You are not too much. You were never asking for too much. You were just asking the wrong people. And now, you get to stop explaining. You get to take up space. You get to end the stories that don't honor your voice. Because here's the truth. Sometimes healing doesn't look like a scar. It looks like becoming unrecognizable to the people who once knew how to hurt you. I used to fear being alone. The silence, the empty bed, the unanswered texts, the absence of someone's breath beside mine, it used to feel like a punishment. Like proof that I wasn't enough. Like loneliness was some sort of shame to be hidden. But now I worship it. There is a holiness to solitude when it's no longer something you're running from. Mornings became sacred again. The slowness, the stillness. No one asking where the clean socks are. No one slamming cabinets because they're angry but won't say why. Just me. A cup of coffee, the sun bleeding through linen curtains. And peace uninterrupted. That's the thing they don't tell you about freedom. It doesn't arrive with fireworks. It arrives when no one is touching your body without touching your soul. Sometimes I still dream about them. Not often, but enough to remind me. In the dream, they're always in the house. My house, laughing, whispering, existing like I never mattered. And I'm standing outside, looking in, fingers pressed to the glass, mouth open but no sound. I used to wake from those dreams in a sweat heart racing, fists clenched. Now, I wake calm, because I know the truth. They were never inside the house. They were inside me. And when I purged them from my life, I wasn't just reclaiming my space. I was reclaiming my mind. I visited the lake house once, months later, alone. It had been sold, but I parked on the road and walked past it slowly like a woman revisiting the scene of her own burial. I stood at the edge of the dock and remembered everything. The proposal, the laughter, the lie, and I let it all rise. I didn't shove it down, didn't armor up. I let it hurt, let it pierce, let it echo. Because healing isn't about erasing pain. It's about making room for it without letting it become the architect of your future. So I sat on that dock until the sun dipped beneath the trees. And then I stood and walked away and didn't look back. She messaged me again. It came late past midnight. A long paragraph, apology coded in excuses, words like trauma, confusion, soul connection. She said she didn't mean to hurt me, that she thought I didn't really love him anymore, that she thought he was already leaving, that it just happened. But betrayal never just happens. It is chosen, over and over, in small moments and big ones, in glances and grazes and secrets and silences. And for every time she smiled in my face, called me sis, laughed at our dinner table. She chose it again. I didn't reply. Not because I hate her, but because healing taught me to stop bleeding for people who bandage their guilt with performance. Let her live with her choices. Let her water her garden with denial. I have better things to grow. You know what surprised me most? How light I felt once I stopped caring what they did. I thought I'd need years to unpack it. Therapy, closure, justice. But sometimes healing isn't an uphill climb. Sometimes it's just setting it down. The shame, the overthinking, the guilt of loving too deeply, the blame for someone else's hunger. I laid it all down. And suddenly I could breathe again. And in that breath, I found her. The woman I used to be before. The one who laughed too loud. Who danced barefoot in the kitchen to songs that made no sense. Who cried during commercials and believed love should feel like warmth, not weight. She's still in me. Wiser, a little sharper around the edges, but still soft. Still open. Still willing to believe in something better. That's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't kill love. It just forces it to evolve. What I feel now isn't bitterness. It's discernment. What I carry now isn't fear. It's boundaries. What I seek now isn't a savior. It's a mirror that doesn't shatter under the weight of honesty. People still ask what happened, especially the ones who weren't close. They whisper like grief is contagious. They want drama, details, dirt, but I give them nothing. Because the most powerful thing a woman can do after betrayal is refuse to perform it. I don't owe anyone my story. I don't need to justify my freedom. Let them wonder. Let them speculate. Let the silence be my legacy. They say closure is something you have to find within yourself. But that's only half the truth, because closure isn't something you find like a missing object. It's something you choose. It's when you stop knocking on doors that never opened for you. It's when you stop rereading the same sentence hoping the ending will change. It's when you stop asking why they hurt you and start asking why you stayed. And God, that question was the hardest one. Why did I stay? Why did I keep feeding a house that never became a home? Why did I keep begging a man who watched me dim and said nothing? Why did I let her sit beside me pretending to love me while carving out a space in the chest of the man I built a future with? But I know the answer now, because I wanted love so badly I was willing to lose myself to keep it. And now, I want me more than I want anyone else's approval. That's what survival gave me. Not just distance from him, but closeness to myself. Not just time away from pain, but time inside peace. It didn't happen in a grand epiphany. It happened in mornings where I no longer flinched at my reflection. In nights where I reached for a book instead of a man who made me feel small. In moments when I caught my own eye in the mirror and smiled because the woman staring back had been through hell and built a home there. And then she left. I've come to believe that the most dangerous woman alive is the one who returns to herself. Because when she does, she becomes ungovernable. Not loud, not cruel, just unreachable to the lies that once seduced her. And that's who I am now, untouched by the games, unbothered by the whispers, unwilling to shrink. He tried one last time. Of course he did. They always do when they feel the light leave them. It was almost poetic, really. I was on my way home from work. The sky was soft pink, the kind of evening that smells like beginnings. And there he was, waiting outside my building, hands in his pockets like a boy unsure of the rules. He looked hollow, like a man haunted by the sound of a door he slammed and didn't realize was locked behind him. He said my name like it still belonged to him. He said he'd been working on himself, that he knew he ruined everything, that he missed me, that it wasn't real with her, that she's gone now. I didn't flinch, didn't fold, didn't even raise my voice. I just looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time saw a stranger. And I said, "You don't get to miss me. You only miss what I made you feel, and I'm not her anymore." Then I walked away, not because I wanted to hurt him, but because I was finally done hurting me. The story ends here, not with a new love, not with a wedding, not with a perfect bow, but with a woman who found her voice in the wreckage. A woman who chose herself when no one else did. A woman who turned betrayal into a blueprint and silence into her loudest weapon. People say stories need a moral, but this one doesn't, because women like me don't exist to be lessons. We're not tragedies, we're not redemption arcs. We are revolutions, quiet, relentless, beautifully untamed. So if you've ever been lied to, if you've ever sat at a dinner table with someone who touched your hand while holding someone else's heart, if you've ever made yourself small in a home you built, if you've ever looked in the mirror and wondered where you went, let me leave you with this. You are not broken. You are not too late. You are not too much. You are just awakening. And when you finally rise, do it without apology. Do it without explanation. Do it like the ending is yours to write. Because it is. It always was. I don't think about him anymore. Not in the way I used to. Not with that ache in my chest or that gnawing question, what if? Now when his name crosses my mind, it passes like a shadow. Quick, weightless, no need to chase it. There's no hatred left, no lingering heat in the wounds. Only scar tissue, faint, smooth, a place I can touch without flinching. Time didn't heal me. I did, and that's what no one teaches you. Time doesn't do the work. You do. In the lonely hours. In the mornings when you force yourself out of bed, even though the weight of what they did sits heavy on your lungs. In the quiet choices, the small ones when you finally choose yourself. That's healing. And it's not pretty. It's not romantic. It's not a movie montage. It's brutal. But it's yours. Sometimes I imagine the version of me that never found out. The one who kept loving blindly, who kept calling her family, who stood at the altar smiling at a man who already belonged to someone else behind her back. That woman she never got to become me. And for that I am grateful. Because the truth, being broken saved me. It cracked the shell I had mistaken for safety. It burned down the future I was building from someone else's blueprint. And in the ashes, I found the blueprint I had written as a girl. Before him, before her. Before I learned how to pretend that silence meant peace. Peace doesn't mean quiet. It means truth. It means sleeping without dread. It means never again having to wonder if the person next to you is secretly somewhere else. Peace is trusting your own intuition and never again silencing it to keep someone close. That is the gift betrayal gave me. Not heartbreak, not destruction, but clarity. Clarity that cost me everything I thought I needed and gave me everything I never knew I had. I get asked a lot now by women who hear my story. Would you do it differently? And the answer is no. Because I needed to be her, the woman who didn't see it coming, the one who trusted too long, who gave too much, who learned the hard way. I needed her. She gave birth to me, to the version of me who will never again ask to be chosen, who will never again beg for loyalty or shrink for comfort or apologize for needing to be held with both hands. She walked through fire so I could rise from it. So no, I wouldn't undo her pain. I honor it. Every scar, every silence, every shattered illusion, because it made this woman possible. I still write letters I never sent, not to him. To her, to the woman I used to be. I tell her she is forgiven. I tell her she was never foolish for loving, that she was never too blind, just too hopeful, that loving deeply was not her weakness, that seeing the best in people wasn't a flaw, that giving second chances didn't make her weak, it made her human. But most of all, I tell her, you didn't fail. He did. She did. They did. You just survived. And now you get to live. So this is where it ends. Not with revenge, not with bitterness, not with some triumphant proclamation, but with freedom. Freedom that doesn't scream. It just exists in the way I wake up without fear, in the way I walk into rooms like I belong there, in the way I no longer explain myself to people who never truly saw me, in the way I hold space for the next love, not because I need it, but because I'm no longer afraid of who I am when I'm loved well. He betrayed me with his adopted sister, but I ended the story. And in doing so, I became the one thing they never expected. Untouchable,